Chapter 7, The Shadow of Comparison. The Ashbourne estate remained lively. For 3 days, the 4 elder brothers and their families filled the ancestral home with conversation, laughter, and endless stories of success. To most people, it seemed like a happy reunion. To Ethan, it felt different. Because once he started paying attention, he noticed things he had never noticed before. Every conversation followed the same pattern. Every single one. Someone would praise the eldest uncle's achievements. Someone would admire the second uncle's wealth. Someone would congratulate the third uncle's accomplishments. Someone would compliment the fourth uncle's family. And eventually, someone would glance toward Darren. Then the atmosphere would become awkward. One afternoon, Ethan sat quietly near the courtyard while the adults talked nearby. The eldest uncle smiled. "Father, you should visit the capital someday." Theodore nodded. "I might. You'd enjoy it." The second uncle laughed. "The capital is nothing. You should see the western ports." The third uncle joined in. "My district recently completed a major security project." The fourth uncle wasn't about to be left behind. The treasury approved funding for several regional developments. The brothers continued talking. One accomplishment after another. One achievement after another. One success after another. Then somebody finally looked at Darren. "And you?" The question hung in the air. Darren smiled politely. "The harvest was good this year." Silence. Just for a second. But Ethan noticed it. The others immediately returned to discussing their own careers. As though the answer wasn't worth pursuing. Something unpleasant settled in Ethan's chest. He didn't fully understand it. But he knew he disliked it. A lot. That evening, he found Theodore sitting alone on the porch. The old patriarch watched the sunset in silence. Ethan climbed onto the bench beside him. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then Theodore smiled. "What's bothering you?" Ethan looked surprised. "How did you know something was bothering me?" The old man chuckled. "You make the same face your father makes." Ethan hesitated. Then asked, "Grandfather? Why do people always compare father to Uncle Marcus and the others?" Theodore's smile faded. For a long moment, the old man remained silent. The wind rustled through the trees. Finally, he sighed. "Because people enjoy measuring success." Ethan frowned. "What does that mean?" Theodore leaned back. "It means many people only see results." The old man's gaze drifted toward the estate. They see titles. They see wealth. They see influence. They see accomplishments. He paused. But they rarely see sacrifices. Ethan listened carefully. Theodore rarely spoke seriously. When he did, it usually mattered. "Do you know why your father stayed in Oak Ridge?" Theodore asked. Ethan shook his head. "No. Because someone had to." The old man smiled sadly. "When your uncles left, they had opportunities waiting for them. Good opportunities. They built successful lives. And I'm proud of them." His eyes softened. "But your father stayed. He looked after this estate. He looked after your grandmother. He looked after me." Theodore laughed quietly. "And he never once complained." Ethan stared. He had never heard anyone talk about Darren that way. Not even Darren himself. The old man looked down at his grandson. "Success isn't always visible, Ethan." The words settled deeply in the boy's heart. That night, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about it. Success isn't always visible. The phrase repeated over and over. When he finally went to bed, the familiar voice appeared. "Daily evaluation complete. Performance acceptable. Ethan stared at the ceiling. Then suddenly asked, "System?" Silence. A moment later. "Yes. That alone was surprising. Usually it ignored him. Ethan hesitated. Then spoke. "How do I become successful?" The room became quiet. For several seconds, no answer came. Then, define success. Ethan blinked. That wasn't the response he expected. What? Define success. The message remained. Waiting. Ethan frowned. Most adults seemed to have a simple answer. Money. Status. Achievements. Important jobs. Yet Theodore's words echoed in his mind. Success isn't always visible. The boy thought for a long time. Longer than the system's questions usually required. Finally he answered. I want people to stop looking down on father. Silence. Then. Objective recorded. Ethan sat upright. What? Another message appeared. Long-term goal identified. The words glowed briefly before fading. For some reason. That made Ethan's heart beat faster. This wasn't a task. Not a punishment. Not an order. It felt different. Like the first step toward something important. The next morning, Ethan woke before sunrise. For once, not because of fear. Not because of punishment. Not even because of habit. He woke because he remembered his goal. The words appeared. Wake up. Ethan rolled his eyes. I'm already awake. A pause. Then. Good. The boy smirked. A tiny victory. After completing his morning exercises, Ethan headed toward the courtyard. Theodore was already there. As expected. The old man was splitting firewood despite his age. Ethan watched for a moment. Then suddenly asked. Grandfather. Yes? Can you teach me something? Theodore raised an eyebrow. Like what? Ethan thought carefully. Then smiled. Everything. The old patriarch blinked. Then burst into laughter. A deep, hearty laugh that echoed throughout the estate. Everything. Ethan nodded seriously. Theodore laughed even harder. You really are an Ashbourne. The old man placed a large hand on Ethan's head. Very well. His eyes gleamed with amusement. Let's see how much you can learn. Far away inside the estate, Darren watched the scene through a window. A smile appeared on his face. A genuine one. For the first time in days. He looked happy. And Ethan didn't notice. But someone else did. New task assigned. The familiar blue screen appeared. Learn one lesson from Theodore Ashbourne today. Reward available. Ethan blinked. Then slowly smiled. For once. This was a task he actually wanted to complete. Chapter end. Next chapter, the lesson of Theodore Ashbourne. Chapter 8, the lesson of Theodore Ashbourne. The morning air was cool. A thin layer of mist covered the hills surrounding Oak Ridge. Most villagers were still asleep. But Ethan Ashbourne was already awake. Not because the system had forced him. Not this time. Today, he had a task he actually wanted to complete. Learn one lesson from Theodore Ashbourne today. Reward available. Ethan had spent half the night thinking about it. What kind of lesson would grandfather teach? Fighting? Leadership? Farming? Something about becoming respected? Theodore seemed to know everything. Surely the lesson would be important. Maybe even life-changing. After breakfast, Ethan rushed into the courtyard. Theodore was already there. The old patriarch sat on a wooden stool while sharpening an axe. The blade reflected the morning sunlight. Ethan approached eagerly. Grandfather. The old man looked up. You're early. You said you'd teach me. Theodore chuckled. So I did. Ethan waited. Excited. Prepared. Ready. Theodore pointed toward a pile of chopped firewood. Move that. Ethan blinked. What? Move the firewood. Silence. The little boy stared. Surely there was more. A hidden lesson. A secret technique. A warrior's training method. Something. Theodore simply smiled. Well, Ethan sighed. Then began carrying the logs. 1 trip. 2 trips. 3 trips. 4. The pile wasn't huge. But for a 5-year-old child, it felt enormous. By the time he finished, His arms felt tired. Theodore nodded. Good. Then pointed elsewhere. Now move those sacks. Ethan froze. What does this have to do with learning? The old man laughed. Everything. Unfortunately, that explanation explained absolutely nothing. For the next hour, Ethan helped around the estate. Moving supplies. Organizing tools. Carrying small bundles. Sweeping storage rooms. Eventually, frustration won. Grandfather. When does the lesson start? Theodore stopped walking. Then slowly turned around. The lesson started this morning. Ethan frowned. I don't understand. The old patriarch sat down beneath a tree. Then motioned for Ethan to join him. Tell me something. What? What kind of man do people admire? Ethan immediately answered. Successful men. Theodore nodded. True. Then asked another question. What kind of man do people trust? The boy hesitated. That answer was harder. After several moments, he shook his head. I don't know. Theodore smiled. Reliable ones. The old man pointed toward the estate. Do you know why people respect me? Ethan almost laughed. The answer was obvious. Because everyone respected Theodore Ashbourne. That was simply how the world worked. Seeing his confusion, Theodore continued. When I was young, I wasn't the strongest man in Oak Ridge. I wasn't the smartest. I wasn't the richest. Ethan looked surprised. Theodore laughed. It's true. The old patriarch leaned back. But if I promised something. His eyes became serious. I always did it. The breeze rustled the leaves overhead. If someone needed help, I came. If a roof collapsed, I helped rebuild it. If a family struggled through winter, I helped them. If I gave my word, I kept it. The old man looked directly at Ethan. Do that long enough. And people begin trusting you. Ethan listened quietly. Trust becomes respect. Respect becomes reputation. Reputation becomes influence. Theodore smiled. But it all begins with being reliable. For some reason. Those words felt heavier than anything Ethan had heard before. The old patriarch wasn't talking about becoming famous. Or wealthy. Or powerful. He was talking about something much simpler. Doing what you said you would do. Every time. Without excuses. Without shortcuts. Without quitting. Almost immediately, Ethan thought about the system. Wake up. Brush teeth. Exercise. Read. Learn. Repeat. The routine suddenly felt different. Not easier. Just different. As though the system had been forcing him to practice reliability all along. The realization made him uncomfortable. He decided not to think about it. That afternoon, the Ashbourne family gathered for lunch. As usual, conversation revolved around Ethan's successful uncles. The eldest discussed government affairs. The second spoke about engineering projects. The third told stories from law enforcement. The fourth talked about treasury matters. Everyone listened attentively. Then Theodore suddenly spoke. Ethan helped around the estate all morning. The table became quiet. The old man smiled proudly. Good work. 3 simple words. Good work. Nothing special. Nothing grand. Yet Ethan felt strangely happy. Because Theodore rarely gave praise. When he did, he meant it. Across the table, Darren smiled. A genuine smile. The kind Ethan rarely saw. For a brief moment. That smile felt more valuable than any reward. Later that night, Ethan lay in bed. The room was quiet. Then the familiar blue screen appeared. Task complete. Lesson learned. Ethan waited. A second message appeared. Reward granted. Discipline plus small increase. The boy blinked. What does that even mean? No answer. As usual. Ethan sighed. Then pulled the blanket over his head. Before falling asleep, however, he remembered Theodore's words. Trust becomes respect. Respect becomes reputation. Reputation becomes influence. For the first time, he began wondering what kind of person he wanted to become. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Years from now. And somewhere deep inside his mind, the system quietly recorded the question. Long-term development path updated. Ethan never saw the message. Because by then, he was already asleep. Chapter end. Next chapter, The Cousin from the Capital. Chapter 9, The Cousin from the Capital. The Ashbourne estate had become unusually crowded. Carriages occupied the courtyard. Guests filled the hallways. Children ran through every corner of the property. For most families, such gatherings happened rarely. For the Ashbournes, they were important traditions. Theodore insisted on it. No matter how successful his sons became, no matter how far they traveled, they would return home. At least once every few years. Unfortunately for Ethan, that meant spending more time with his cousins. Most of them were older, smarter, more accomplished. Or at least they enjoyed claiming they were. Ethan usually avoided them. Life was simpler that way. Unfortunately, one cousin had other plans. His name was Lucas Ashbourne, the eldest uncle's son. And according to Lucas, the future pride of the Ashbourne family, Ethan first encountered him near the orchard behind the estate. The older boy sat beneath a tree reading a thick book. Unlike the other cousins who spent their days playing games, Lucas carried himself differently. More serious. More confident. Almost like a miniature adult. When Ethan walked past, Lucas looked up. Their eyes met. You are Darren's son. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Ethan frowned. Your Uncle Marcus' son. Lucas nodded. Then returned to reading. The conversation seemed finished. Then, Father says you are surprisingly disciplined. Ethan stopped. That wasn't what he expected. Most relatives barely noticed him. What does that mean? Lucas closed his book. It means most children your age don't wake up before sunrise. Ethan froze. How did he know that? Lucas smirked. You run every morning. I've seen you. Ethan suddenly felt uncomfortable. The system appeared immediately. Remain calm. I like running. Ethan answered. Lucas raised an eyebrow. No child likes running. Ethan couldn't argue with that. Because it was completely true. The older boy stood. I have a question. Ethan immediately became suspicious. What question? Lucas pointed toward the estate. Everyone says grandfather likes you. Ethan blinked. What? Lucas folded his arms. Grandfather praises you. He talks about you. He spends time teaching you. The older boy looked genuinely confused. I don't understand why. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ethan gave the only answer he could. I don't know. Because honestly, he didn't. Theodore spent time with him. But Ethan had never asked why. Lucas stared for several seconds. Then suddenly smiled. Let's compete. Ethan immediately regretted stopping. Compete in what? Anything. The older boy sounded excited now. Reading. Math. Memory. Running. Ethan groaned internally. The system remained silent. Clearly enjoying the situation. No. Lucas blinked. No. I don't want to compete. The older boy looked shocked. As though such an answer had never occurred to him. Why not? Ethan shrugged. Because it sounds tiring. For several seconds, Lucas simply stared. Then laughed. A genuine laugh. Not mocking. Not arrogant. Just surprised. You're strange. People tell me that a lot. The two boys looked at each other. Then unexpectedly, both started laughing. The tension disappeared. For the first time since the family gathering began, Ethan actually enjoyed talking to one of his cousins. Unfortunately, peace rarely lasted long. Later that afternoon, the family gathered for tea. As usual, conversations drifted toward achievements. Lucas' recent academy examination became the main topic. He ranked first in his district. Marcus sounded proud. Several relatives immediately praised him. Remarkable. Excellent. Just like his father. Lucas smiled politely, though Ethan noticed he seemed embarrassed. Then another relative laughed. The Ashbourne talent clearly runs through the family. Several people nodded. Someone glanced toward Darren. The atmosphere shifted. Just slightly. But Ethan noticed. Again. The relative smiled awkwardly. Well, most of the family. A few people chuckled. Not loudly. Not maliciously. But enough. Darren simply smiled. As always. It's fine. The conversation moved on. Yet Ethan's appetite disappeared. Across the table. Lucas looked uncomfortable too. Interesting. Very interesting. That evening, Ethan sat alone beneath the giant oak tree. The same tree the system often forced him to run toward. The village was quiet. The sky glowed orange. Then footsteps approached. Lucas. The older boy sat beside him. Neither spoke immediately. Finally Lucas sighed. My father talks too much. Ethan laughed. Mine doesn't talk enough. That earned another laugh. Several moments passed. Then Lucas suddenly spoke. I don't think Uncle Darren is a failure. Ethan turned toward him. The older boy looked completely serious. Really? Lucas nodded. My father left. He built a career. The boy looked toward the estate. But Uncle Darren stayed. His voice grew quieter. Grandfather always smiles most when he's around. Ethan remained silent. Because Theodore had said something similar. People saw results. They didn't see sacrifices. Lucas kicked a small stone. I think adults are strange. Ethan grinned. That's the smartest thing you've said all day. Lucas threw the stone at him. Ethan dodged. Both boys burst into laughter. For a while. They simply sat beneath the tree. Watching the sunset. No competition. No comparisons. No expectations. Just two cousins. Eventually Lucas stood. I'm leaving in 2 days. Ethan nodded. The capital? Unfortunately. The older boy smiled. When we meet again. His eyes sparkled with challenge. I still want to compete. Ethan sighed dramatically. Of course you do. Lucas laughed. Then walked back toward the estate. Leaving Ethan alone beneath the tree. A moment later. The familiar blue screen appeared. Observation recorded. Ethan frowned. What observation? Several seconds passed. Then. Not all comparisons are malicious. The message vanished. Ethan sat quietly. Thinking. For once. The system might have had a point. And somehow. That annoyed him. Far away, lights glowed inside the Ashbourne estate. Family members laughed. Shared stories. Created memories. Yet Ethan had a strange feeling. These visits wouldn't last forever. Eventually everyone would leave. And Oak Ridge would become quiet again. For some reason. That thought made him unexpectedly sad. Chapter end. Next chapter, The Gift Before Departure.